So here's a fun update. We told you yesterday about a 16-year-old named Ralph that got shot for the grievous trespass of having knocked on a stranger's door. He's going to pick up his younger siblings. Knocked on a stranger's door. Turns out he had the wrong address. What happened to him? Well, he got shot in the head. And then that person shot him again. Came outside and shot him a second time. And then the 16-year-old, I don't want to get too grim with you here, but you should know what we're dealing with. The 16-year-old had to, despite having a gunshot wound to the head and body, I think it might have been his arm with the second place he was shot, had to go to 3 houses before somebody helped him. A 16-year-old child. Well, that might make you think, boy, the law ought to get involved in this. Well, they have. Let's look at the damage report talking about it.
Andrew Lester is the 84-year-old who has now been identified as the one who shot Ralph Yarl just a short time ago. Now, thankfully, the update is that he has been charged with first-degree assault and armed criminal action in the shooting of Ralph Yarl. You can see Andrew Lester here in this shot. That's the individual who set all of this off. And of course, Ralph Yarl will remind you that his family has a GoFundMe for both the legal effort as well as the medical expenses.
All right, so a couple of things. First of all, link to that GoFundMe is in the description. But let's be clear. America's doing me proud today. I'll tell you. There's 3, count them, 1, 2, 3 pieces of good news. Number 1 is your old pal Jake, and as I hear from our friend Franny, not necessary to go to Missouri to march. Thank God. My car is in the shop. I was going to have to take a bus. I was not looking forward to that. Whew. Not necessary. The law is doing what it's supposed to do. I cannot fathom that there's a jury that's going to see this any other way than what it was. Piece of good news number 2. That GoFundMe for that young man, $2.9 million. So is it a dire need for you to donate to that GoFundMe? Nope. Better part of $3 million is going to that family. Good. Why is that good news? Well, number 1, he was shot in the head, so you got to imagine that medical expenses are not going to be cheap. Number 2, he's trying to seek justice as a black family in the American legal system. That's not going to be cheap. I realize that the government is going to be doing the prosecution here. But I promise you, things being what they are, this family will find themselves in court with a bill to pay. But it looks like they're set. $3 million ought to do it. So should you donate to that GoFundMe? Only if you want to make a statement. If you want to add to the statement that was already made, which is the average American doesn't put up with this nonsense. The average American, crazy, I know, but it turns out the average American is on the side of the 16-year-old who got shot for no damn reason. I sound angry. I'm actually delighted. This is all good news. In addition, and I don't want to say we're out of the woods yet, but it sounds like Ralph is home and recovering. Let's let the better presenter here, John Idarola, tell you about it.
If you're not familiar with the story, is a 16-year-old high schooler had just been trying to pick his brothers up when he went to the wrong address and rang the doorbell twice. And that was all it took for Andrew Lester to decide that he was going to execute this young boy. Now, here's how he tells it. He says that he was in his bed when he heard his doorbell ring and grabbed a handgun before answering, adding that he was, quote, scared to death by Yarl's size. He stated he believed someone was attempting to break into the house and shot twice through an exterior storm door within a few seconds of opening the main door. Yarl was shot twice, struck in the left forehead and right arm. And I don't believe literally anything that this insane, likely racist old man says. The idea that you were just scared of the size of a black teenager is, like, whether it's just an excuse or a truth, they do overestimate the age and size of people who aren't white. That we know is the way that racists work implicitly. You believe that he was trying to break into the house? I'm not a burglar or anything, but I don't think that they teach you to ring the doorbell multiple times if you're trying to break in.
Yeah, in my burgling days, I very rarely rang the doorbell. I'm kidding. I rang it all the time when I was a burglar. No, double kidding. It's absolutely insane to me that there was even a day where I realize it's an old man. It's an old man. But it's bizarre to me that there was even a day where this guy was just allowed out of custody. I don't. If we're saying that the stereotypical criminal that shoots somebody in cold blood needs to be held for the community's safety because whatever's going on in their brain isn't wired right to have other people safe around them. I don't see why this old man is treated any differently. But I'm not going to complain too loud because they're charging him. And to be fair, I don't know the nitty-gritty details that they're dealing with. I'm assuming, and it's a hell of an assumption in the U.S., I'm assuming they've confiscated the weapons. This was a wild one, and I'm glad this kid wasn't 2023's Emmett Till. Jesus.
Usually will alert people to your presence. So no, I don't believe literally any of this. It's good news that he's been charged. We'll see what happens. The other bit of good news, and this is honestly a miracle, but family member of Ralph Yarl said that after 3 nights in the hospital, he's now been brought home and continues to improve. I am just going to assume that he should be home after just 3 days. It's entirely possible that our healthcare system is so devastatingly broken that you only get 3 nights to recover in the hospital. But regardless, the fact that he is able to go home is a miracle after being shot twice, including in the head. And so, Mondale, what do you think about this tragic situation?
I think, and I appreciate you pointing out the fact that this man's statement should hold no water, no ground, because that second shot was not an immediate shot. It was actually after he shot this young man in the head, he then shot him. He said to him, "Don't come around here," and then shot him the second time. And if this kid wouldn't have put his hand up, that bullet wouldn't have been in his hand, it would have been through his heart, and he probably wouldn't have lived. So we also need to tell the part that this kid not only was shot by this man, America sold this kid out when he got up and ran to 2 neighbors' house and they turned him away. And it wasn't until he got to the 3rd neighbor who said, "Get on the ground," made this kid lay on the ground with a gun pointed at him, telling him to raise his hands, and then he called the police. So this kid has been shot, blood leaking out of his hand and head, has been forced to lay on the ground again with a gun pointed at him by a neighbor who is also afraid, like you said, of the big black man who was 16-year-old honor student bandmate. And it's absolutely.
Well, that part was news to me. Kid's got a bullet hole in his head. Literally, we don't know if lying down is going to make his brain leak out of his skull. But the neighbor thinks he's going to play cop, even if he really is a cop. He's going to play American cop, make the kid lay down on the ground first, and then call for help. Wouldn't have happened with a white kid. Let's not even ask the question. It wouldn't have happened with a white kid. Probably wouldn't have happened with an Asian kid. We have very weird racism here. But a black kid? Fuck him, right? Get a hold of yourself, America.
absolutely disgusting that we found ourselves in.
Keeping it posy. $3 million. It's a callous freaking society. That's a callous way to show that some people care. But at least some people do care. Good. That's a tiny piece of redemption here.
This place in America where people with guns can just pretend to be afraid and say anything. This is the problem with the castle doctrine and also stand your ground. You could just say, I was afraid, or this person was on my property, and you can just start shooting at people as if they're hunting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, like, there's no, to me at least, I'm only speaking for myself, the idea that your emotional state should determine whether something is legal or not, I think is insane. But even if you believe that there was a context where your fear justifies whatever violence you want, America doesn't get to have that. Not America, where people are trained from birth to be utterly terrified of literally everyone, but especially certain groups constantly. No, you don't get that as an excuse. We'll see what ends up turning up in this. I'm glad, thankfully, that, maybe they never were going to do the charges and it was just the protests that sprang up that caused them to. But either way, that's, I guess, the way that America works. There are charges now. We'll see what ends up happening, and just happy that Ralph somehow survived this terrible violence.
Justice. Had to fight too hard for it, but hey, justice. We're making strides, man. You ever see something like that in the news and you actually feel a weight come off of your chest? Your left arm stops being numb. That might just have to be something I look into. But the point being, my God, good job. America, kind of good job to Missouri police. And if you're from Missouri, there's nothing you have to do except really take a moment to reflect and check yourself. You're watching this stream, odds are it's not you. But check yourself. Would you have been the guy who shot the child? Would you have been the neighbor that didn't open your door for the kid? Would you have been the neighbor that made a damn near mortally wounded child lie down on the ground before you helped them? Make sure you're not those people. And if you are, decide in your heart, first and foremost, that you're better than that. Because we all should be.